Frontline is a presentation of the Documentary Consortium.
Tonight on Frontline,
we have not won the Cold War to lose the aftermath.
The downsizing of America's defense industries has already cost hundreds of thousands of workers their jobs.
It's a sense of having played by the rules, and when push came to shove, finding that you were absolutely disposable.
I know today that the world's finest makers of swords can and will be the world's finest makers of plowshares.
But can defense contractors learn how to compete in commercial markets?
It's an unnatural act to instill commercial mentality on the military business.
If contractors can't compete, millions could lose their jobs.
I really don't know who to be angry at. Who do you blame for the fact that peace broke out?
Tonight on Frontline, Ashes of the Cold War.
With funding provided by the financial support of viewers like you and by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. This is Frontline.
The B-52. It stands as a monument to the country's determination to prevail. It was built to win a nuclear war no one ever wanted to fight. Now, 5 generations of them sit parked in the Arizona desert. And what of the people who made these weapons, flew them, maintained them? What happens to them at the end of the Cold War?
What are we going to do with our victory? Is it going to be a source of strength or weakness?
Candidate Bill Clinton acknowledged the dilemma facing the United States in the wake of the Cold War.
We have to plan for the peace dividend. If we don't do it, we'll lose jobs. If we do it, we'll generate jobs. That is a major issue. Millions of Americans...
In the United States today, the last of the good blue-collar jobs are defense jobs. During the 80s, their numbers increased even as steel and auto jobs fell away. At least 6 million Americans earn their living through the defense budget. By the decade's end, 2 million could be unemployed.
A very high percentage of them are military, both active and retired.
California's prosperity was built on Pentagon spending.
In fact, they like to say there are more admirals per square mile over here than anywhere else around.
California absorbed nearly $3 trillion of the defense budget during the 44 years of the Cold War. Just before the Second World War, a small aircraft company left Buffalo, New York, for San Diego. The city offered a good deal: free land near the airport, and a harbor specially dug to accommodate the company's flying boats. In return, San Diego got new jobs. Over the next 60 years, the company would shift from airplanes to missiles. It would join General Dynamics, the largest defense contractor in the country. General Dynamics and the United States Navy became the largest employers in San Diego County until the twilight of the Cold War.
General Dynamics is out of the missile business tonight.
The report that the city could lose some 4,000 jobs has political and business leaders scrambling.
Last summer, General Dynamics sold its missile division to Hughes Aircraft. The threat of losing thousands of jobs stunned the city.
All right, thank you, Michael. And let me remind you again that in talking to Hughes today, they say they've not decided to take any jobs out of town, and they have not decided on a timetable to make that decision.
General Dynamics had been losing contracts for 4 years. The company had earned billions during the Reagan buildup, but by 1990, GD's stock hit a new low. To boost its value, GD's chairman, former astronaut William Anders, decided to cut his losses and sell off parts of the company. "52-year-old David Blanchard is a casualty of those decisions, laid off from a management job after 13 years.
The principal owners of General Dynamics back in Chicago finally decided that they'd had enough and wanted to collect their money and go do something else, and hired a CEO to sell the company. I guess it was their right. Maybe they could have treated the workers nicer in the process, but maybe they don't have an obligation to do that. Life doesn't owe you a living. On the other hand, it's scary when you don't have a job. You wish life owed you a living.
And my first impression when I saw all of you sitting here this morning was, wow, they all look like they are ready to go to work. You all look
Hundreds of
terrific.
engineers like Blanchard have replaced their office routine with the retraining seminar.
Now you have the 3 cards that say highly proficient, competent, little or no skill.
A deck of aptitude cards and platitudes is the best parachute now for missile engineers and scientists. They make up 42% of the industry.
Hi, I'm calling in regards to job openings. Quality engineer job.
San Diego defense contractors anticipate laying off 14,000 more in 1993.
If anybody shows up for general help or anything like that.
No, it won't be. She's officially.
On average, aerospace workers earned more than $18 an hour. These engineers say new jobs now pay $10 an hour. And not many companies want middle-aged former defense workers.
It's a very destructive process. It just grinds you down. And it just, tears into you. And it gets harder and harder to walk out the door in the morning and to face that kind of stuff.
California's state economy ranks 7th among nations in the world, but defense cutbacks are reducing its plans to rubble. There's record empty office space, tens of thousands of bankruptcies, and in San Diego, a real estate market in a tailspin.
It's not yet massive homelessness on the streets, but for many of those involved, it's equally or even more frightening. It's children in college that can no longer be supported. It's homes that are being lost. It's families that are divorcing. It's alcoholism that's rising.
Charlie Shaken is a professor at the University of California.
It's a sense of having played by the rules, having given your all in the expectation that you would be taken care of, and when push came to shove, finding that you were absolutely disposable.
In San Diego, those who once built the nation's defense line up for a handout. The machinist union gives free food to former co-workers.
Take $1, they're all the same.
Men who check the quality of warheads now load groceries into a box. Brothers who'd taken a step up the economic ladder step up for charity.
Okay.
Mothers wonder how they'll put their children through school. Their dreams washed away in a deluge of layoffs.
You're welcome.
You go there, you pick up some food, which you feel like you're getting a handout because you're used to buying your own food, getting your own money. So there's places you can go, and they tell you can go there and apply for food stamps.
Good morning.
Becky and Roger Dawson met while working at General Dynamics. After 10 years building Tomahawk missiles, both were laid off.
You work less money.
I gave me my 60-day notice, and they told me the reason I was chosen was that I didn't have a college degree and that I was over 50 years old.
With 2 teenagers to support, the Dawsons have sent out hundreds of resumes in the past 2 years.
Responses coming back are, we've got 3,000 applicants for that job. We closed the job. We're not going to hire anybody because we can't choose one person.
Overqualified?
You're overqualified. You're underqualified for what we have available at this time, or you're overqualified for what we have available. We'll hold your resume. If something comes up in the future, we'll give you a call.
Roger Dawson's unemployment ran out months ago. Their savings spent, the family lives on Becky's unemployment check.
We have 4 people in the house. She's getting a maximum of $920 right now a month. That's not too much. The rent is $964.34 for this house. I'm 2 months behind right now, going on 3 months behind in payments, and they're going to foreclose on me.
The Dawsons face the future of many former defense workers. Lost jobs, the prospects of losing a home, and living in public housing.
I have no idea where we're going to go. I'm sure we'd like a job. I'd like a job, I might be able to keep my house, you know.
One month after taking office, President Clinton came to California, a state which has lost nearly 500,000 defense jobs over the last 2 years. California helped Bill Clinton win the presidency. He told Californians how together they could win the peace.
Our country began a few years ago to reduce defense with no plan to convert our massive human capital from producing instruments of war to using the technologies of peace to clean up the environment and to improve the quality of our lives and to go forward. And so we have to do that, but because we haven't, California suffers today. So
Clinton told California he wants to unleash military technology towards more socially useful goals. But as the defense budget shrinks, what's been unleashed instead is an economic war between the states. Many of the jobs leaving California have gone to Arizona, one of the least populated states in the nation. Historically, Arizona's economy ran on what old-timers called the 5 C's: cotton, cattle, citrus, copper, and climate. In 1951, when Hughes Aircraft broke ground for a new plant outside Tucson, it became the first large manufacturer in the state. Howard Hughes had bought 30,000 acres of Arizona desert for a military electronics plant. By the late 50s, the plant made the world's first guided missile, the Falcon. Over the course of the Cold War, Arizona would become one of the most military-dependent states in the nation. By 1986, the Hughes plant built missiles for each military service. Now, those programs are in danger.
We used to have 6 programs in production here. And in 1994, only 2 of those programs will be in production.
The vice president of Hughes Missile Systems Group is Ed Biggers.
So we're trying to posture ourselves so that, okay, if one of the programs disappears, it's not 1 out of 2, it's 1 out of 8. Or if 3 disappear, it's not both of the programs we have in production, it's 3 out of the 8 programs.
Hughes lost bids on 2 recent missile competitions. Over the last 7 years, 5,000 jobs have been lost. That had state politicians like Governor Fife Symington worried.
Well, there are thousands of jobs at stake. I mean, if you use Hughes alone as an example, with their workforce going from over 8,000 down to about 4,000 in a period of 5 years, and the trend lines were ugly, we could see that we needed to go in and really stabilize that situation.
They asked us what we were doing about it, and why are you not moving more jobs from your other Hughes industries over here? Why don't you do more about that?
Then opportunity knocked. Hughes bought General Dynamics missile contracts.
While this is big news, the city of Tucson is waiting for the next announcement. Hughes has talked about consolidating some operations, and Tucson's been pushing hard for those jobs.
I have had a conversation with Hughes about their purchase of the General Dynamics Missile Group.
Symington wanted those jobs. He asked Hughes whether a tax incentives bill would swing the deal.
The answer is an emphatic yes.
In Phoenix, the state capital, it would become known as the Hughes Bill, a deal to help the company cut costs and beat the competition. It could cost the state at least $25 million.
Clearly, it is a gamble, and hopefully it'll pay off.
Former State Senator Jaime Gutierrez chaired the Appropriations Committee. He says the governor first sold the bill as an incentive for defense conversion, rather than simply a way to move jobs to Arizona.
Members of the legislature, the Honorable Fife Symington.
Major part of its sales was we will have ultimately some shifting over, some products that came out of this defense research that is going to be consumer-oriented, and that was a major part of the sale of the bill.
I would say that we helped the state become more aware that, yes, that had good economic value, but there were other things that had good economic value for the state of Arizona as well, like consolidating defense structure. As the business is going through a restructuring, the state of Arizona could maybe improve its chances. It would help us, but it would help the state. This is not the last time this is going to happen. There's going to be more of these things going on.
So under Hughes' influence, a bill designed to help businesses convert became instead a bill tailored to lure jobs from California. The bill gives tax credits for new hires, which could eliminate Hughes' property and corporate income tax for 5 years. Tax breaks that could give Hughes the margin it needs to beat the competition. It passed overwhelmingly and sent an overwhelming message to Hughes executives that Arizona is a state that loves defense.
We would like to be a shining example in this country of a state that has a sign up that says capital investment is welcome here. Come talk to us. We encourage this. And defense restructuring is something that we understand.
We have support. This is an economic decision.
2 months later, Hughes Missile Systems announced it would consolidate on.
The ultimate question, or perhaps the eternal question, always becomes, would they have done that without the bill? I don't know.
Even before the bill, Hughes had been weighing the advantages of moving to Arizona. Cheaper wages, lower cost of living, and fewer regulations.
The calculations that we did and the trade-offs that we did favor Tucson more than with or without that bill. I mean, that I'm saying is that the numbers, the difference in the costs are bigger, significantly bigger than what comes to us through that bill.
So you would have moved here?
Yes, yes.
Back in San Diego, few have been invited to move. Instead, those who once built Tomahawk missiles at General Dynamics pack up, sending equipment and their jobs off to Arizona.
I hate to tell you this, but what's the problem? Well, here's your layoff notice. What? Layoff notice? I said, what can you do? You know, you can't go ahead and throw a temper tantrum. You know, you're supposed to be adults. You know, wow, okay. You know.
Lorenzo Early and Eddie Haynes spent 7 years making Tomahawk missiles, skills they thought would lead to job offers in Arizona.
If they don't have a success rate with this cruise missile or the Tomahawk, the rest of the ACM, and the Phoenix missile, or whatever else they bought from General Dynamics, they're going to have to lay off people anyway because they're going to lose the contract.
So, taking people who doesn't have the experience will make sense.
It doesn't help. It doesn't help their cause because it's winner take all now. It doesn't help their cause.
So if I was head of the contract, well, give me someone who knows. I don't want to train anybody, and I need someone who knows the job today, yesterday. who can step in and do a good job for me. And that's us.
4,000 workers had jobs when General Dynamics made its deal with Hughes. As the programs move to Tucson, 3,000 of them will be left behind.
Great day.
In February, Governor Symington celebrated delivery of a political trophy, the first Tomahawk missile made in Arizona.
Don't we only do this at football games?
For Hughes executives, it's almost a free lunch. A workforce paid one-third less than California's, and tax breaks worth nearly $50 million.
We, at the state level, deeply appreciate Hughes as a great corporate citizen, and we look to many future prosperous years together.
But Hughes workers in Tucson have small cause for joy. The company has notified the Labor Department that as it consolidates, 1,000 of them may be laid off this year. And the tax incentives bill favors new hires, not keeping old employees. By the end of this year, half of the 16,000 people who worked for Hughes and General Dynamics missile plants will be out of a job.
In this case, it became a game almost of musical jobs. Here's an industry that's contracting, and all of a sudden, Arizona offers an extraordinary series of incentives to attract the few remaining jobs. That's not economic development. That's fighting over the scraps.
No bogus bonus for Bill! No bogus bonus for Bill! No bogus bonus for Bill!
While GD workers in San Diego face unemployment, company managers receive bonuses for increasing stock dividends. GD stock has quadrupled in the past 2 years. In March, the company announced it would pay out $200 million in profits. As a result, Chairman Bill Anders received $24 million. He's one of the highest-paid executives in the country.
The crooks on the street are no different than the big businessman that's up there sitting in his easy chair taking money out of your pocket when you go out the door. That's the same as putting a gun to your head and saying, give me all your money. Because that's basically what they're doing to us.
California did not plan, and I think paid a very heavy price and will continue to pay a very heavy price. Planning after the fact is nearly disastrous. This was something that was more than on the horizon. This was something that was on television sets virtually 24 hours a day as we saw the Eastern Bloc come unstuck, as we saw the Soviet Union dissolve, as we saw a superpower literally disappear before our eyes.
Six months after Hughes announced its missile group would move, the California state and congressional delegations convene in Washington. Representative George Brown is a senior member of the California delegation.
We're in the pits as far as our California state economy is concerned. It's never been worse. We have in my region something like 10 or 12% unemployment, far worse than any other state or region in the country. And we're not prepared to see that continued.
Focus on those specific firms that you have and talk to their CEOs. Offer them help in any way that you can. Find out what their real problems are. They lie to you a lot sometimes, too, you know.
The California delegation contains the most liberal and most conservative members in both political parties. This is the first time in anyone's memory they've gathered in the same room.
We can reshape the destiny of this whole country.
It's a crucial time for the state. Hughes is weighing whether to move another division, its engineers, to Arizona as well.
We don't want to lose any more high-paid jobs over there. It's bad enough to lose the missile assembly, but to lose the highly skilled engineers that are doing design work, there's a couple of thousand of these. They make a major contribution to the area. We think that we ought to find ways to utilize that capability in California for the benefit of California.
Willie Brown, Speaker of the California Assembly, says the state has done a lot to support business.
No question. California has, with great regularity, provided the appropriate kind of tax incentives, but you have to give something in return. And that something in return is fair wages, for people who work there, and opportunity, and equal opportunity for people who are different racial stocks, different age stocks, different ethnicity stocks, as well as different sexual preferences. Keep in mind that Arizona has none of that quality of life, or very little of that quality of life. That's a state that had all kinds of trouble doing something as benign as Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. So it doesn't surprise me that some people would find that a more attractive place to go, particularly if they were white, bred white.
California's had the image that, it's the golden state. Nothing can ever go wrong. And the lifestyle is different, and nothing can ever go wrong. And all of a sudden, people are starting to wake up to the fact, well, things go wrong. I was over there during the riots. It was I lived there during the Watts riots, and was involved in a lot of community meetings, cross-cultural meetings, and there was a lot of pain, a lot of hurt, and so there are a lot of things, social things that are at issue, and it's not. I don't think it's as simple as is the defense industry supported.
I said budget authority. Yes.
What is the difference?
California has more freshmen in Congress than any other state.
They worked on some of the latest machinery. I just wonder how that idea strikes you.
But it also has clout. Ron Dellums chairs the Armed Services Committee.
As I sit as chair of the committee, I'm totally for 22 years, I've been talking economic conversion, and finally kicking and screaming, everybody's coming past the street corner. We've been standing on for 22 years, and I'm very pleased about that.
Ron?
Dellums and other California Democrats have planted money in the federal budget to seed the state's conversion efforts.
In the Defense Conversion, Reinvestment, and Transition Assistance Act of 1992, the money goes for three purposes. One, to help defense-dependent industries convert and diversify away from DOD. And secondly, to help defense workers and military personnel transition into non-defense jobs. Finally, to help defense-dependent communities adjust to base closures.
Last fall, Congress authorized $1.5 billion for defense conversion. California wants a fifth of that money, but the funds have never been released. The California delegation will spend the next 3 days lobbying, visiting 16 different agencies.
My district contains Los Angeles Air Force Base, 8,000 military employees and roughly 80,000 civilian employees.
I have the Long Beach Naval Shipyard. It's very critical that we come to talk with you today.
Our areas have been hit by 2 base closures in the last couple of years, both Norton and George Air Force bases.
I'm not too sure how you'd like to handle the meeting. I'd be happy to give you a thumbnail sketch. We are a small office, currently have 30 professionals, 500 communities.
The Californians find agencies ill-prepared to deal with the scale of their problem. Sam Farr is an assemblyman from the Monterey Peninsula.
Well, I'm always frustrated when I have to go and sort of beg for money which Congress has allocated for the purposes of communities to use, and finding that there's just sort of an ownership of that money in the Beltway rather than not an attitude of get that money to the community as fast as possible. If indeed this is an emergency response, the emergency services are very, very slow.
Inside the White House, the president is focused on his economic stimulus package. One aide is coordinating conversion policy. Then the New York Times leaks news of 15 bases the Secretary of Defense may close. 8 of the 15 bases are in California.
The economic impact is $6.4 billion. In the San Francisco Bay Area, it is a wipeout. I spoke to the governor yesterday.
Dianne Feinstein, the former mayor of San Francisco, is a newly elected senator.
The economic impact of these base closures wipes out totally the benefit of the economic stimulus package for California. So it's the federal government, in essence, doing one thing with one hand and another thing with the other hand.
At the White House, Speaker Willie Brown proposes a quid pro quo to Clinton. The conversion money California wants in exchange for the state's votes on Clinton's economic package.
We're talking about is trying to give him a report card that is publishable with great results by September 1st, which is the deadline date for enacting the totality of the Clinton program. And after all, There are 54 members of Congress, 2 U.S. senators, and 52 representatives from California that can be awfully important to Mr. Clinton in the entirety of the delivery system on his package.
Hours after the California delegation meets with the president, the White House announces Clinton will deliver a conversion package the very next day. The idea is to preempt the bad news about base closures with good news about conversion. The Westinghouse plant where he will deliver his speech has laid off 3,800 people in the past 2 years.
For things like border patrol and drug interdiction and things of that nature.
Many defense contractors, like Westinghouse, are trying to keep government contracts by inventing civilian applications for military programs, a practice known as dual use.
What's your sense of the time frame before they'll be widely commercially available? Okay, we're aiming...
But it will be 5 years before Westinghouse can get its consumer products to market. The president seems most impressed with the electric car.
Nobody lets me drive anymore. Well...
Clinton wants all defense companies to do as Westinghouse is doing, but he's starting from scratch. The previous administration had no conversion program for him to build on.
Well, it's ready to drive. Clearly, defense conversion can be done and can be done well, making change our friend and not our enemy. But in order to do it, we must act decisively, act intelligently, and not simply react years after the cuts occur.
The president releases the $1.5 billion Congress authorized last year. 20% of it will go to California.
We will triple the budget of the Defense Department's Office of Economic Adjustment.
Les Aspin, the defense secretary, looks puzzled. He's finding out details of the policy as the president delivers his speech.
We're even going to set up a toll-free number to attract good ideas from good companies. And you will like this. The number is 1-800-DUAL-USE.
The president has broadly outlined the plan and left his cabinet to turn policy into programs.
It's amazing. That's how policy is made. Huh? He added about 3 things to our basic program.
I read the description of some of these technologies.
Clinton wants to double conversion money next year, but it will take at least 18 months for the money released today to reach those who need it most. They wonder whether an 800 number will save their jobs in time.
He's making a lot of good promises. And they are. I want to believe in him. I really do. But I'm a Republican. I've voted Republican. But on the other hand, I saw so many people just 3 months ago, friends of mine, with families who went out on the street. And I was supposed to be one of them until a guy retired my shop, saved my job.
24 and a half years I've been doing this. I've worked all the way up to doing calibrations in the standards lab. And now I'm back into the maintenance department moving chairs. And 24 and a half years, and yeah, we're worried.
The president says bold action will convert the defense industry. But can the military-industrial complex change itself? From California to Connecticut, communities are being devastated by defense cuts. In Groton, General Dynamics builds nuclear submarines. The latest generation is called the Seawolf. 2 years ago, the Navy funded 35 Seawolves. Now they've cut back to 2. The valves that make the Seawolf silent are designed in Tucson, Arizona at Sargent Controls. It's a one-product line shop. In less than 2 years, all orders will be filled. That has the company's president, former subcommander Don Tarquin, worried.
Keeping the business alive and keeping the opportunity for jobs open. Making sure that I don't make some stupid decision that will cost the jobs of our employees. I think that concerns me more than anything. And I face those kind of decisions almost on a daily basis.
Tarquin's most concerned about keeping his engineers. Their skills are crucial to making silent submarines.
If we go away or if we go strictly commercial, the United States Navy will not have access to that technology in the future. There is a use for the technology that we supply the submarines that quiets the submarine. It also has a side effect in that it eliminates erosion from the components that it's involved with. And in the petrochemical and in the utilities industries, they have a need for erosion control.
But Tarquin faced difficulty breaking into commercial markets. He had laid off 60 of his 220 employees. Desperate for help, he approached the Arizona Council for Economic Conversion.
Coffee, we're at that front table here.
Its founder, Roz Boxer, is a former nuclear freeze activist, armed with a belief that military contractors can convert. Her group holds a monthly breakfast where defense subcontractors exchange ideas. Last July, she told Tarquin about a federal conversion grant that might help him break into the utilities industry.
Up until then, even though I had been working with companies and I knew some of this information, it really became clear to me this company never had a marketing department. Okay, they never had to sell in a commercial field. So we're talking about a whole area that this company has to now develop.
When you deal with the Department of Defense, you don't have a sales organization. We have no sales organization. The marketing manager for this company is, you're looking at him. I do all the marketing. And you can't get away with that kind of an organization when you're competitively going after commercial fields that people are already established in.
Last fall, Sargent won the $325,000 grant through the Pentagon's Office of Economic Adjustment and the Department of Labor. But after 8 months of waiting, Sargent has yet to see a dime.
A year ago, we figured that in 3 years that we would run out of our backlog and complete all our contractual requirements. So we had a 3-year life, which is now down to 2.
You're under the dinner.
I sure am. That's putting it mildly.
For high-tech defense contractors, conversion could be profitable. Some say Hughes Aircraft is poised to make the switch.
Hughes has really quite exceptional technical strength on a very broad front of areas which have application to the real world. In other words, not the military, but the commercial. In communications, in auto electronics, possibly in consumer markets.
Wolfgang Demisch is an aerospace analyst with the Union Bank of Switzerland.
The company has both the technical know-how and the corporate motivation to try to pursue those opportunities.
This is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
It is the largest non-oil business merger in history. General Motors announced today it is buying the Hughes Aircraft Company. Together, they will add up to the second largest company in the world, behind Exxon.
It was big news. GM had bought the world's leading military electronics company, and Hughes got instant access to a $500 million a year market in auto electronics. In suburban Los Angeles, a Hughes engineer works on a futuristic GM project. It's an electric car, a project conversion advocates cite as an ideal use for military technology. For David Auerkirk, this project represents a personal conversion from defense to automotive engineering.
It's a better feeling working on something that's not going to be used to hurt people, and missiles and things, are needed. They have to be done. But electric vehicles are something that's going to be doing something good, hopefully something that's remembered.
This is Auerkirk's maiden voyage into the commercial world. He spent years designing power supplies for missiles and satellites.
In the military, we design for very high performance, very tight specifications. In the commercial arena, we're looking to lower the cost significantly so that it's affordable by the consumer. And they can't afford $1 million inverters and $10 million cars.
Is that restricted at all?
Yeah.
Oh, you got some restrictions?
Engineers working on the power supply have to make it lightweight, safe, and easy to recharge. These are all problems Hughes solved in its military applications. A market is emerging. California, Massachusetts, and New York have mandated sales of non-polluting cars by 1998. But GM's had record losses. It says it can't afford to mass-produce the car. That's left Hughes trying to do development on its own.
They really don't have a clue where to begin. Normally, the government came to them and said, here is a problem, and then they could focus on solving it. But in the commercial market, nobody goes to Microsoft and says, hey, invent Windows. Here is our problem. You have to do it yourself.
It's taken nearly 10 years for the marriage of GM and Hughes to get a product ready for market. Forewarn alerts school bus drivers when kids are in their way. Its development shows how differently the Defense Department and the commercial world do business. Forewarn is manufactured by HE Microwave at Hughes' Tucson plant. Managers from Delco, GM's auto electronics subsidiary, run the line. Project manager Jeffrey Owens.
From an engineering perspective, you're dazzled. It's things that you only read about in textbooks. They're actually doing, pushing the laws of physics, if you will. My commercial side looks at it, though, and says, boy, that's going to take a lot to get that into production to be cost affordable. So, I had mixed emotions.
Forewarn's military cousin is the next generation radar for F-18 fighters. Hughes wants to produce one or the other at the push of a button, the kind of dual use President Clinton favors. But it's not that simple.
It's an unnatural act to instill commercial mentality on the military business. So it takes a champion worrying about it every day to try and make it happen.
The lands. We don't have flat lands. Right.
Delco managers were perplexed by Hughes's approach to manufacturing.
Our problem here in terms of culture clash is that on the military side, you may build 10 of something that costs $100,000. On the commercial side, you may build 100,000 of something that only costs $10. And that you have a different reward system that goes with both sides of the house. On the commercial side, you care about a penny because a penny out of $10 is a lot, but a penny out of $100,000 on the military side isn't much at all. But you better make darn sure that you deliver all 10 of your products on time and to schedule.
You can't take people that are accustomed to selling units that are as high as $200,000 a unit that they sell to the government and get them down to where they can sell something for $35 easily. It takes a lot of retraining, and it takes a lot of mental preparation and acceptance.
Jerry Gary started his own company when he got laid off from Hughes.
It's hard to be creative there. And this was a very, very refreshing thing for me to be able to get involved in. My attorney thanks you for all this time we've spent drawing these documents.
He teamed up with a small Hughes subcontractor to manufacture a wheelchair lift. The University of Arizona has bought 8 Spectralifts in the last 2 years.
I live in a world that's at 3'6", But the first time I used it, I can remember, boy, it was just as clear as a bell. I came into the lift, and when I raised up and people were standing up, I could see the entire floor and players on it, and it was incredible. It was a feeling of freedom, It was very exhilarating.
The Spectralift's not high-tech enough for federal dual-use funds, nor big enough for tax breaks in Arizona. Gary says dollars alone won't make conversion happen.
The process of economic conversion, of having somebody move from a particular type of business to another, is not a simple task. It approaches breaking down traditions. It involves going away from things that are successful in the business you've been in for years, and you have to sort of be able to open your mind up and be a little bit innovative and flexible and.
As Hughes aims towards commercialization, their best customer, the Pentagon, seems itself an obstacle to commercial success. During the Gulf War, U.S. troops navigated through Iraqi minefields carrying a global positioning system known as GPS.
There are virtually no landmarks. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers were able to operate using satellites that were basically parked in orbit 12,000 miles up above them.
The satellites beamed location signals to handheld receivers carried by units in Desert Storm. Stephen Colwell is president of an association of GPS users located near San Francisco, California.
The initial GPS system cost in the neighborhood of $20 billion to build and produce and have all the different satellites that are up. We have, as a consumer marketplace, we have a tremendous amount at stake. We should be able to use that to our best advantage. GPS is a technology that is really going to find its home in the consumer.
Your car may be off the planned route. If so, press the OK nor out button for a nor out.
In the streets of Washington, GM Hughes Electronics tests a van that finds its way with GPS.
It knows we are on 50.
But the commercial version of this military product still has a few bugs.
Your car may be off the planned route.
US 50, what it says.
And it's out of reach of most taxpayers' pockets.
Yeah.
If we made you a real good deal and sold it right now, it'd probably cost between $750,000 to maybe beyond $1 million. We've never really figured it out.
Part of the reason the van costs so much is that the military scrambles the satellite signal.
This is something which our industry should be taking advantage of. Instead, it's being locked up by the Pentagon, which doesn't want to provide high-precision information because hostiles could guide missiles to target in the U.S. using it.
To figure out a way around it, GM's had 15 engineers working since the Gulf War ended. The project's director is Ralph Wilhelm.
The contrast is to go to Japan, where the navigation system is up and running and the satellites are fully operational. Last year, they sold in excess of 250,000 vehicles with navigation systems.
Drive straight through the intersection onto Arlington Memorial, BRP.
There isn't a single big development that we've ever had from the A-bomb on down, which spies didn't find out about. The only guys whom we heard, I think, by secrecy has been ourselves. People didn't know, people had to reinvent the wheel, people couldn't think of, okay, here are some things that exist, what else can I do with them? Our greatest strength is freedom of information.
The Defense Department says the administration can change the policy. The political appointee who could do so has not yet been confirmed. Another Pentagon spokesperson told Frontline, DoD is not going to become an R&D lab for defense firms that want to get into commercial markets.
There needs to be a real change in the Defense Department. They've got to develop a culture of commercialization. They've got to learn to work with private entrepreneurs, to help them to understand what the technology is capable of, and they've got to understand what the private companies can contribute in terms of manufacturing capability, global sales, commercialization, and that sort of stuff. And we've got to develop some constructive partnerships there. We haven't learned how to do that yet.
Regardless of whether the administration succeeds in changing Pentagon policy, Hughes is committing the bulk of its research dollars towards military endeavors. Company executives say their survival depends on defense, not conversion.
It is very difficult. Maybe that's the reason that Hughes doesn't feel real comfortable with the word defense conversion, because it's not easy to create total new businesses with big markets that other people haven't already created, or go penetrate somebody else's market. Because why could we be better at that? What sustainable advantage would we have over other people in that area? Smart people, yeah, we have smart people, but there are a lot of them around. Do we understand the market better? So we're trying to be pretty careful to penetrate areas that we think have a high probability of payoff.
Hughes is betting the future on consolidation in Arizona. Last month, the company announced it would move 2,000 engineering jobs from Los Angeles to Tucson. After 40 years in Arizona, Hughes Aircraft reincorporated itself as a brand new company. Under recent amendments to the tax incentives bill, Hughes could pay no corporate tax for up to 10 years. By then, will Hughes be Arizona's strength or its weakness?
You can't be reliant on one large company coming in and supplying all the work for everybody. Well, look what we've done with the military. I mean, we have become a nation that is reliant on military spending, military production in order to create jobs and to maintain jobs. So what we've done nationally, we were doing here locally.
The sad truth is that so far, conversion is no solution for unemployment in the defense industry. The entire U.S. global positioning industry employs only 3,000 people. Hughes has 500 technicians and engineers working on the electric car. HE Microwave foresees peak employment of 200. Without changes in the way the Pentagon and its contractors do business, it's unlikely that defense conversion can generate new jobs for the 2 million defense workers who'll become unemployed by the year 2000.
For 50 years, we've been spending 5% or more of GNP for military equipment and per people and procurement and stuff like that. Well, that's 2 generations. Whole communities have grown up with this. And if the government then says, okay, this particular party is over, we don't need this anymore, that's fine. But I think it's unconscionable to just say, well, we've changed our mind, goodbye. And, it's sort of like strip mining a whole generation.
In the desert outside Tucson sit $13 billion worth of planes. They represent half the budget for conversion over the next 4 years.
I don't pretend that this will be easy, and all of it will take some time. But the choice we face is between bold actions.
In California last month, unemployment neared 10%.
That's that big black pit again. What is going to happen next? I don't know. I'm not a person who normally expresses himself outwardly. I tend to keep it in. I've felt a lot of anger and resentment, but I really don't know who to be angry at. Who do you blame for the fact that peace broke out?
I know today that the world's finest makers of swords can and will be the world's finest makers of plowshares, and they will lead America into a new...
Who's converting who?
Is converting putting myself in the street with my kids, with no roof over the head.
That's what conversion's done. That's what it's doing. Nobody's converted us to anything. Nobody's given us any opportunities to go anywhere else. To convert something, you have to have some place to put it. You can't convert coal into ashes without having a place to put the ashes. And that's what they're doing. They're taking the ashes and scattering them into the wind. Where are they going to land? We don't know where we're going to land. Nobody does. Where are the ashes?
Funding for Frontline is provided by the financial support of viewers like you and by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Frontline is produced for the Documentary Consortium by WGBH Boston, which is solely responsible for its content. For video cassette information about this program, please call this toll-free number, 1-800-328-PBS-1.
This is PBS.